Imagine being the strongest being on Earth. You can fly anywhere in the world, swim in the deepest parts of the ocean, punch through buildings, completely invulnerable. Until one day, you can't remember the magic word that turns you into a god anymore. So you're cursed to live out your life as a regular guy, married, stuck in a low-paying job, relying on your wife just to pay the bills. This is Miracleman, created by Alan Moore before Watchmen. And honestly, it's one of the most messed up superhero stories ever made. But when he does get his powers back, things get so dark it's still hard to find some of these pages uncensored today, and nobody could even legally read this book for decades because of a rights mess that dragged in Marvel itself. So let's get into what actually happens in Miracleman and why some people say this comic ruined superheroes for good. In 1956, there was a group of heroes called the Miracleman family, consisting of Kid Miracleman, Young Miracleman, and Miracleman himself. However, 25 years into the future, in the year 1981, a villain named Commandant Garer of the Science Gestapo is scheming with his atomic stormtroopers. He wants to take over the world, but they can't, so they decide to travel into the past, to the year 1956, thinking they have advanced technology from the future and it's going to be easier. The plan works and they arrive safely, but young Johnny Bates, also known as Kid Miracleman, sees the ships arriving and decides to investigate, thinking there will be innocent people in trouble. A group of farmers don't take Garer and his troopers seriously, so he proves how powerful their weapons are by destroying their home. Kid Miracleman arrives and starts beating up the troopers with ease, since their weapons have no effect on him. But more time machines land, disgorging the warriors from the future, and he has his hands full. He knows he needs help, so he travels at super speed to find Dickie Dauntless, aka Young Miracleman. The two heroes only need to say the word Miracleman, and they transform into godlike beings, making them incredibly strong and indestructible. Together, they are more than a match for the troopers from the future, and they easily take them out. But there are multiple invasions happening at the same time all over the world. In the offices of the Daily Bugle, copy boy Mickey Moran reads the awful press news and says his magic word, Kimota, which transforms him into Miracleman. He reunites with the other heroes, and together they subdue the invaders, but they decide to split up so they can fight them in other parts of the world as well. However, as soon as they leave, the troopers instantly get up as if they weren't even hurt. More ships arrive from the future and things keep getting worse and worse. Commandant Garer gives the order to blow up their own ships, saying their advanced technology makes them indestructible, and once all of his people arrive, they'd be stranded here and nobody will be able to stop them, not even the heroes. Miracleman has an idea. He wants Kid Miracleman to stay here, while he and Young Miracleman travel into the future, before the invasion even began, and try to stop Garer that way. It works. They arrive in the year 1981 and begin destroying the ships, but Garer doesn't recognize them and doesn't understand why they are attacking him. He gets easily taken out and the Miracle family hand him over to the authorities. In the past, the invaders disappear, as if they were never there, and Kid Miracleman is shocked. The two heroes travel back to 1956 and all three are reunited, having successfully fended off the invasion from the future. In the present, in the year 1982, Michael Moran is having the dream again, and it isn't a good dream. He dreams he is a superhero, flying through space, his power coursing through his veins like molten silver, his muscles moving with precise grace beneath his skin. He knows he is invincible. He's not alone though. Like firebirds in red and yellow, two other figures soar beside him, but he cannot see their faces. Suddenly, the sky catches fire and he is screaming and burning, and then he explodes. The last thing he hears is the sound of thunder. He wakes up next to his wife Liz, who wants to help him but she can't. He's been having the same dream for several years now and he doesn't know what it means. It's giving him migraines, but he needs to get to work because they are barely making enough money to live and he can't afford to skip it. He works as a freelance journalist and today he's attending the grand opening of a new nuclear power plant in the Lake District. Out of nowhere, the place is overrun by terrorists who take the journalists hostage and ask them to come inside because they have an announcement. Apparently, this is the world's first plutonium hijack and the terrorists want this event to be recorded and documented. But Michael's migraines are getting worse by the minute. He is overwhelmed with memories of a past life when he used to be a superhero, but he can't remember the magic word that transforms him. He finally remembers the word. It's Kimota. He says it out loud and he begins transforming into a being with godlike powers. The terrorists have no clue what just happened and one of them goes blind during the transformation. They panic and start firing at him, but he isn't even fazed. He's transformed into Miracleman and he's basically indestructible now. 18 years he was trapped in that old tired body, but now it doesn't matter because he remembers everything and claims that he's back. He goes back home and finds his wife sleeping in front of the TV, but she's scared and doesn't know who he is. He's completely changed and doesn't look like her husband anymore. He wants her to take a closer look and see that it's actually him, Michael Moran. They've been married for 16 years. He pours her a coffee and shows her a vision of how he got his powers and became a superhero. One night, a being named Guntag Borghelm appeared and said that Michael was chosen. For his courage, for his honesty, special powers were granted to him to be used for the good of humanity. He only needs to speak the word Kimota. This being was an astrophysicist who claims that the key harmonic of the universe is his to command, a word which, when spoken, bestows godlike power upon the speaker. This is his gift to mankind. After that, Michael found he could fly, he had tremendous strength, he was invulnerable to all harm, he was Miracleman. He tells her about Dickie Dauntless, aka Young Miracleman, who only had to say the word Miracleman, and he had powers just like him. They fought crime together until 1956 when they were joined by Johnny Bates, aka Kid Miracleman, and they became the Miracle Family. During the years they were together, they fought the strangest villains of all time, including the freakish dwarf genius called Dr. Gargunza. Time and time again they thwarted his insane plans and jailed him, but he always came back. It was almost as if they were playing a game which neither side took seriously. Until one day, when the Miracle Family received the alert that Gargunza had some kind of sky fortress hovering over the North Sea. They intercepted it, but something was horribly wrong. There was a bomb hiding inside and it exploded just as the heroes had gotten close to it. The blast hit Michael and it hurt like nothing had ever hurt him before. He woke up 2 months later. He was Mickey Moran and he was in the hospital. When they found him, he had terrible burns and most of his bones were broken. But he also lost his memory and couldn't remember being Miracleman. He couldn't remember the magic word that transformed him. What happened today at the nuclear power plant is all over the news, but someone isn't happy that Miracleman is back, and he breaks the TV. Liz sleeps naked next to her husband but is awakened by the sound of the telephone ringing. It's not for her. Someone wants to talk to her husband, a person who claims to be Johnny Bates, aka Kid Miracleman. Johnny arranged a meeting with his former teammate and they are both happy to see each other after all this time. Johnny isn't a kid anymore. He's all grown up now and he owns Sunburst Cybernetics, and his office is in one of the biggest buildings in London. 18 years ago they went to investigate the weird ship which belonged to Dr. Gargunza, but he felt something was wrong and tried to escape right before the explosion. Like Michael, he woke up several days later in the hospital and had suffered burns. He didn't lose his memory, but he claims he lost his powers and lived most of his life as a normal person. He thought Michael and Dickie had been killed in the explosion. He was shocked to see him on TV at the nuclear power plant the other day. While they are talking, Michael thinks that something is wrong about Johnny. When he was just a kid, he could have turned into Kid Miracleman and stayed like that forever. He could have had it all. Money, prestige, fame. He could have severed his links to humanity. He could have become remorseless, unstoppable, and totally corrupt. Is that what really happened to him? Is he still Kid Miracleman? Michael thinks he's right, so he decides to test his theory and pushes Johnny over the side of the building. He was right, because instead of falling to his death, Johnny levitates, proving that he didn't lose his powers all this time. He was just faking it. Michael wants his wife to run away. He knows something bad is about to happen, and he wants her to be safe. She runs past the secretary who was bringing coffee, but Kid Miracleman kills her in cold blood for dropping it on the ground. He plans to do the same thing to Michael's wife, so Michael transforms into Miracleman, and a battle of the gods erupts. A young kid from the streets gets in the way, and Johnny picks him up and throws him towards a building, proving just how ruthless he's actually become. Michael saves the boy and returns him to his mother, but he failed to watch his back and gets punched so hard that he's sent into the clouds. Johnny has lived for the past 18 years as Kid Miracleman and has gotten a lot stronger, while Michael lived as a normal human being, so he doesn't stand a chance against this maniac. The fight takes place over London, but Miracleman is sent crashing into the ground below, destroying an entire building and getting buried beneath the rubble. Next, Kid Miracleman goes after Liz, who is desperately trying to get away in her car. He stands in the road unbothered by what's about to hit him, causing her to crash the car. He then takes the car and crushes it with his hands, turning it into a ball of metal which he plans to use to stomp her to death. But Miracleman makes a comeback and punches him from behind as hard as he can. Nonetheless, Kid Miracleman is still stronger and he comes back with a vengeance. 2 cops are sent to investigate what's going on, but they choose to sit on the sidelines and just report back to their superiors. Word of mouth travels fast until the news of this epic battle reaches the military, specifically a guy named Sir Dennis Archer, who says the monsters are back and he wants to send Mr. Cream, whoever that guy is. Michael is getting beaten to a pulp. He literally stands no chance against his opponent, who is faster, stronger, and more vicious than he ever was. Kid Miracleman claims victory, saying he's gonna finish him off. Him, who used to be his junior protege, him, Kid Miracleman. But saying the word out loud causes him to transform and revert back to his human form, which is still the same frail little boy from 20 years ago. He says the name and wants to change back, but he can't, which means that for some reason, Johnny Bates has lost his powers and can't transform into Kid Miracleman anymore. Michael takes his wife and decides to leave him alive, saying they can't do anything for him. Somewhere else, a black man in a white suit and with blue sapphire teeth picks up the phone and talks to Sir Dennis Archer, who sends him on a mission. We see the truth, that in 1963, that weird ship that exploded didn't belong to Dr. Gargunza. It actually belonged to the military, who had planted a nuclear bomb inside and detonated it, trying to kill the Miracle family, trying to kill the monsters. Johnny spent his entire life living as Kid Miracleman, but changing back into a regular human causes his brain to fry. He talks to himself and says he's not evil, he wouldn't kill people, while Kid Miracleman is angry with him, begging to be set free once again. Miracleman and his wife go on an excursion together, somewhere outside the city, trying to figure out just how powerful he really is. He's strong and invulnerable, but he can't see through walls and he doesn't have super breath. Meanwhile, Mr. Cream visits the hospital where the news reporters from the nuclear plant were taken after they got injured. Liz doesn't understand why there is an age gap between Miracleman and him. She thinks they are two separate bodies. One exists in real time and space, while the other exists somewhere else, until he says the magic word and makes the switch over. But if that's true, how come they have the same mind, the same memories and stuff? She also says she missed her 2 periods. She's pregnant and going to have a baby, but the baby isn't his, it's Miracleman's. Mr. Cream talks through messages to one of the journalists who had his eardrums burst during the incident, trying to figure out who Miracleman actually is. He figures out that it was actually Michael Moran who transformed, but before leaving, he kills the man in cold blood. Ever since Liz told her husband she's pregnant, he hasn't spoken to her. Apparently, they've been trying to have a kid for years now, but he's not able to have children, unlike Miracleman, who makes miracles happen. He's conflicted about the whole thing. He thinks the kid is not his, but Miracleman's. He gave her in one night what Michael couldn't in years. He goes back to his freelance journalist job, but Pete, his boss, doesn't have any jobs for him right now. He goes into an elevator where he meets one of his co-workers who brought her baby to work. Mr. Cream is also there and puts a gun to his head, but Michael can't transform into Miracleman. The discharge of energy is gonna fry that baby. Mr. Cream then shoots him in the back, causing him to lose a lot of blood and blackout. The man who shot him says his name is Evelyn Cream, but he used tranquilizer bullets because he didn't want to kill him. He decides to tell him the truth, that Michael gained his powers in 1954 as a result of an experiment named Project Zarathustra, carried out by a branch of Air Force intelligence known as Spook Show. But in 1963, this organization, for reasons unknown, decided to terminate the experiment by destroying the Miracle family with an atomic bomb. Sir Dennis is talking to his associates, saying that Mr. Cream has defected and is probably working with Miracleman, heading towards one of their secret bunkers. They are right because that's exactly what happened, so they send wave after wave of soldiers trying to stop him. Nothing works against him. He's unstoppable. While Michael wants to know the truth about his origins, Mr. Cream wishes to share that knowledge for his own personal reasons. He unties him and removes the gag, which allows Michael to say the magic word and transform into Miracleman. The journey towards the secret bunker continues, but the soldiers are no match for him, so they throw a big bomb at him, hoping it's enough to stop him. But Miracleman emerges unharmed and almost reaches the bunker. Mr. Cream claims that this bunker is where Michael was unknowingly subjected to the experiments of Spook Show, but for some reason, it's still standing. They haven't destroyed it yet, and it is located in the Cotswold Hills. Nothing worked trying to stop him, but Sir Dennis has one ace up his sleeve and sends out Big Ben to try and stop him. Even though the project was supposedly abandoned in 1963, Sir Dennis continued the work and tried to create another super soldier, but there were problems. The project's creator, Dr. Emil Gargunza, had vanished, along with his entire life's work, so they had to work with what they had left. Big Ben has superhuman strength, agility, and power, but he's mentally disabled. They programmed him to think that Miracleman is a secret agent working for Russia, trying to steal a death ray from inside the bunker, so he goes all out trying to stop him. But it's no use. Miracleman is so much stronger than him and he deals with him with a simple slap. Big Ben is sent flying into the forest nearby and goes unconscious, nearly crashing into Mr. Cream, who is heading towards the bunker. Cream wants to blow up the main vault door, but Miracleman knows an easier way and just rips it out with his bare hands. This place is filled with machines, gadgets, and even alien skeletons, but they don't know what else to expect inside. In a way, Big Ben is the perfect soldier because his mind is weak. He was easily programmed to do what the Air Force wanted him to do. He eventually woke up inside the forest and walked straight back towards the bunker, determined to stop the Russian agent at any cost. Sir Dennis and his people arrived several hours later, but the place was partially destroyed. Miracleman was watching some videotapes of the experiments when he suddenly and inexplicably went berserk. Apparently, an alien ship crash-landed somewhere in England, and with the knowledge they gained from studying the alien and its craft, they were able to replicate a human being from a single cell. Both its brain and body are almost perfectly evolved, lending it a wide range of extra human abilities. The next stage is the implanting of two identical infraspatial trigger devices into the brain of the evolved clone and the brain of its cell donor. When the trigger device is activated, the human body is transported into infraspace, while the clone body moves into our world. At this point, the consciousness of the human form is transferred to that of the clone. The trigger device is activated by the speaking of a secret hypnotic word. There were 3 test subjects selected for this experiment. Young males, the children of deceased Air Force personnel who have no other surviving relatives. Basically, they made a clone of them using the DNA from the alien that crash-landed on Earth, giving the clone superhuman abilities. This clone lives inside infraspace, another dimension so to speak, and when the trigger word is spoken, it switches places and consciousness with the real human, becoming Miracleman. Big Ben arrives and sees a tape about himself, how they claimed he was a failed experiment with lesser powers and a weak mind. After the clones were created, the scientists created a dream world where the subjects were brainwashed into believing that they received powers from a mystical being named Guntag Borghelm. They can't afford any errors, so the programming has been lengthy and exhaustive. The creatures, as they called them, have been dreaming for the last 8 years, their entire existence a computer-designed fantasy. This was the recording which pushed Miracleman over the edge and made him lose his temper. Dr. Gargunza was explaining that, by employing the technology from the visitor and his ship, they have completely programmed the minds of these near-divine creatures, providing them in the process with an utterly manufactured identity which is theirs to manipulate at will. Basically like a comic book character. After they left the bunker, Big Ben just stood there on his knees, waiting for new orders, as the cleanup crew arrives to take him somewhere else. Dr. Gargunza is still alive and he's on a safari in Africa with his trusted bodyguard Gunter. Meanwhile, Kid Miracleman is pretty much a vegetable at this point, but his mind is still active and Johnny is having an argument with his alter ego. He wants him to say the word and become Kid Miracleman once again, and then they can eat up the hot nurse who is feeding them. Mr. Cream meets with Sir Dennis and says he's working with Miracleman now because he wants power. He wants the Air Force to leave them alone and stop bothering them. But Sir Dennis warns him that Miracleman is a monster and he made him his pet. Humans are nothing more than animals to him. Liz is several months pregnant with Miracleman's baby. She should feel safe in his arms, but instead she feels vulnerable and afraid while they make love. A young boy named Jason Oki is stashing away food and supplies, preparing for an eventual thermonuclear war, considering ways in which to make an anti-radiation suit out of oven foil. He runs into Miracleman but doesn't understand why his body is shining. That's his force field. He calls it the Tinkerbell effect. Tinkerbell from the Peter Pan novel. He gives the young boy a small demonstration and destroys a big rock without breaking a sweat. Jason asks if he can give him some chemicals to drink that will make him have superpowers so he can be his partner, but it doesn't work like that. Next, Miracleman goes back home, but his apartment has been ravaged and someone has kidnapped his wife. Mr. Cream is having nightmares of being attacked by giant insects and monsters, probably haunted by horrible things he's done over the years. Miracleman wakes him up, saying his wife's been kidnapped and he needs his help. Liz was taken by Dr. Gargunza and brought to one of his labs, where he performs tests on her and sees that she's pregnant. First, Mr. Cream calls the mental hospital, where Kid Miracleman is staying, to see if he escaped somehow. But no, he's still in a vegetative state inside his room. Next, he calls Sir Dennis and threatens him, saying Miracleman is going to devastate London if they don't return his wife, but the Air Force didn't take her. Dr. Gargunza introduces himself to Liz and says he's the one who created Miracleman. In a way, he is almost his son, and soon he will be his father, whatever that means. They perform tests on Liz, mostly to check the status of the baby and see if her pregnancy is progressing as planned. Gargunza sees the baby for the first time and says it's a girl, but Liz already knew this. His base is somewhere in Paraguay, and Mr. Cream, together with Michael, take a plane headed there to find Liz. The baby is perfectly healthy, but her body is glowing just like Miracleman's. It's simply amazing, which brings the doctor to tears. The two guys spend the night inside a motel, but Mr. Cream can't sleep because of the heat, while Michael is totally unbothered by it. He keeps having the same dream, insect bodies crunching underfoot. He runs through a forest of hanged men, feeling the terror that follows him, only to find out that the terror is actually in front of him. During the tests, the baby opened her eyes and looked directly at Gargunza, which kinda scared him for a second. In 1961, they were conducting experiments on the Miracle family, keeping them inside a dream state while programming their minds. But something went wrong and the three guys were able to communicate with each other subconsciously. They arrived in a mystical place, but they didn't know what was going on and thought they were being attacked by something. They went inside a strange city and found their giant bodies on the ground, attached to giant wires and cables. They were basically trying to wake themselves up from this dream state, but Dr. Gargunza had a safe fail for this. He unleashed a horde of vampires to attack and weaken them, hopefully leaving them drained and back into a deep sleep. The scientists managed to keep the three guys supplied with dreams for 7 years, but if they wake up, they're gonna destroy the lab and kill everyone inside. Dr. Gargunza was born in Rio de Janeiro, and later he worked for the Germans during the Second World War. In 1961, he worked in Britain for the clandestine branch of Air Force intelligence known as the Spook Show. He's only ever wanted one thing: to live forever, and he had hoped that Project Zarathustra would lead him towards that end. In the dream world, the three guys have defeated the vampires that their unconscious minds had projected, and Gargunza wonders what's next. Next, they encounter one of their greatest villains, who unleashes a horde of women to seduce them. The villain knows that the three guys are unable to hit a woman. It's their biggest weakness. Miracleman is able to figure out that something is wrong, and one of the scientists is amazed by how powerful his subconscious actually is. But if he wakes up, he's gonna kill all of them. Miracleman is able to uncover who's really hiding behind this great villain. It's Dr. Gargunza. Gargunza has one ace up his sleeve and tricks the Miracle family into believing it was all a dream. All dream patterns are re-established completely and all the loose ends tied up. It worked. They've managed to calm them down and get them under control. In the present, Gargunza talks to Liz and decides to tell her his life story. He grew up poor with his mother and father, but when his dad died, they didn't even have the money to bury him. When he was 9 years old, a local gangster adopted him, mostly because he was ugly, so they made him their mascot. But Gargunza was extremely smart. He had an IQ of almost 190, so he was able to take over the business and steal money for himself. He eventually controlled the gangster's men and killed him by beating him with a baseball bat. In 1928, he moved to Europe, where he began to study science seriously, genetics in particular. He also worked for Hitler and was given a position within the Reich, researching genetics in 1934. In 1941, he realized that the Axis could not win the war, so he defected to England. He was made very welcome by the Air Force and started working for Sir Dennis. In 1948, he was given the means by which he might accomplish his goal of living forever. That's because an alien ship crash-landed in Britain and the Air Force was sent to investigate it. That's how Project Zarathustra was born. Liz can hardly believe that an alien ship from another galaxy crash-landed in Wiltshire, Britain, almost 35 years ago. But the doctor reassures her it actually happened. He and his team were sent to investigate, but the ship had no doors or ramps, so they had to use ropes to get inside. Everything was strange and they could barely understand how to move inside, but they found something, a dead alien creature. This alien had two of everything: 2 hearts, 2 brains joined together as one, basically 2 bodies. The secondary body was tremendously evolved and adaptable. There were minds with more than one body, which basically made spacesuits redundant. Just select the appropriate body and put it on. But one night, something went wrong, an engine meltdown perhaps, that caused the 2 bodies to occupy the same space at once. Gargunza believed that this process might be made to work upon humans, so he created a perfectly evolved Superman from the cells of regular kids and placed that body in infraspace to be summoned by the activation of a brain implant. This brain implant would be activated by saying a simple word. Sir Dennis was there the entire time and supervised everything, but he didn't try and stop it. He wanted power, he wanted them to create a super soldier. The only way to create these new beings was by enslaving their minds with dreams, and with help from stolen alien sciences, he built a device that would shape their dreams and nightmares. The only thing needed was the appropriate fantasy, a pseudological system that would explain their abilities in a credible fashion. One day, while having lunch, he stumbled upon a comic book about Shazam, where young kids are able to change into superheroes by saying a word, so he did the same thing to the Miracle family. First, he started with Michael, Liz's husband, and then continued with young Miracleman and kid Miracleman. There were 2 more subjects, Rebecca and Lear, but he doesn't want to give her any details about them. He only did this because Gargunza wants to live forever in a perfect body, but the process doesn't work upon those above a certain age. He was too old for this to work on himself. Next, he wanted to transfer his mind inside Michael's body, but it wouldn't work on an artificially created being with an already existent brain implant, not on such a mature and powerful personality. But if that being were to breed and produce a baby that duplicated his powers naturally without the need for said brain implant. But Liz already knows where he's going with this. Miracleman eventually arrives in Paraguay and he attacks Gargunza's lab, destroying an entire section of the building. He then goes on a rampage inside, killing everyone who stands in the way of him finding his wife, until he finds the doctor himself. He claims he's here to kill him, but the doctor utters a word that turns him back into Michael Moran, Abraxas. Michael says the magic word to change back, but it doesn't work. Gargunza installed some kind of metal failsafe, which prevents him from transforming back for at least an hour. Next, the doctor says another word, Steppenwolf, which transforms his cute little dog into Miracle Dog, a giant alien monster who looks hungry. Mr. Cream arrives and wonders what happened to him, why he's not Miracleman anymore. Gargunza knows him by reputation and wishes they could have more time to talk, but they only have 1 hour. He gives the two guys a head start and allows them to run away before he sends Miracle Dog after them to hunt them. Mr. Cream is the first to be attacked and gets his head chopped off before he could figure out what was wrong. The dog then goes after Michael, who sees the blue sapphire teeth inside the monster's mouth and realizes he's next. He tries to shoot it, but the creature bites off 2 of his fingers and he drops the gun. Liz was given sedatives and is now sleeping peacefully in her room. Gargunza wants Gunther to keep her safe at all costs. She's all that matters now, but after she gives birth, the men can have her. The guards are sent to retrieve the bodies and they quickly find what remains of Mr. Cream, but the head is missing. Michael is about to be eaten alive when he remembers the magic word and says it out loud, which transforms the monster back into a cute dog. He then takes a rock and smashes its brains out. Now he just needs to wait for the hour to pass so he can transform once again. The soldiers find the dog, but there's no sign of Michael. Out of nowhere, there's a powerful sound of thunder and Miracleman emerges once again. He attacks 2 guards and smashes their heads together, while the third one watches in horror. His body is shining and the guard is speechless, saying he's waited 40 years for the first blonde god to appear and replace them, but Miracleman just stabs him through the heart. He then flies towards the lab at lightning speed, remarking how these people have kidnapped his wife and tried to kill him. He's gonna spare no one. He flies straight into one of the guards, ripping his body in half and spilling his guts everywhere. He then goes straight into the ground where Gargunza is hiding. He crushes his larynx before he can say the failsafe word and then takes him high into the sky. He doesn't stop until they are in the upper atmosphere and they can see the planet and the moon from space. The heat is slowly draining from Gargunza's body and his eyes cloud, barely conscious. Miracleman wonders if this is what he wanted, to see all the world spread beneath him, to know what gods know. Gargunza is his creator, his father in a way, so he gives him one final kiss before throwing his body towards the planet. The doctor picks up so much speed igniting into the planet's atmosphere that by the time he hits the ground, there is nothing left but his skull. Liz is sleeping in her bed, but she's having nightmares about Dr. Gargunza and that monster dog, Miracle Dog. She wakes up with severe cramps and thinks she's having the baby any minute now. The place is a mess. Miracleman went berserk on Dr. Gargunza's base and his men. All the guards are dead and everyone else is running. Her husband finally shows up and she's happy to see him. Gargunza wanted to take her baby and transfer his sick mind into it. The contractions are a few minutes apart, which means she's gonna have a baby pretty soon and they need to get to a hospital. They're still in Paraguay in the middle of a jungle, so he puts her inside one of the trucks and then flies towards the nearest hospital. Meanwhile, 2 people show up at the hospital for mentally ill children, where they keep Kid Miracleman. There is something wrong with these people and they talk funny, as if they're not from around here. They pretend to work for the Royal Air Force and demand to see the child, but as far as they can tell, he has lost his mind and they can't communicate with him, so they leave. Miracleman is unable to reach a hospital in time, so they stop because his wife goes into labor. He stays by her side and helps her deliver the baby while thinking about Gargunza, and if trying to become immortal was worth it. His dreams came to nothing and were small to begin with. A worthless life extended indefinitely is still a worthless life. Liz eventually gives birth to a beautiful baby girl, and he thinks to himself that this is what life is really about. These are the moments when we are real. The baby is hungry, and she wants to suck on her mother's milk. But before digging in, she says her first word, which leaves both parents in shock. The 2 people from before are some kind of aliens and they took control over 2 regular people, using them as drones. One of them goes into a deep state of meditation and is able to access underspace, where she sees multiple people. This is where the second body is sent after someone says the word and switches places. Miracleman's human form is here, which means his changed self is currently dominant. Miracle Dog's changed self is also here, as well as the females. They are talking about a beautiful blonde woman, but we don't yet know who she is. The couple finally arrives back home, but Liz wants Miracleman to change back into Michael. She'd feel more comfortable seeing him that way. But his human self was attacked by Miracle Dog and is in rough shape. He's even missing 2 fingers, even though the wound has healed by now. The doctors and nurses keep checking on Johnny Bates, but his mind is being bullied by Kid Miracleman. He finally has enough and stands up to his bully, claiming he's sick of being trapped inside his mind with him, so he decides to do something. He starts talking to the nurse, saying he's feeling a lot better now, and is ready to be moved with the other children. Kid Miracleman seems unhappy about this, but this is what he actually wants, and he is smiling in a dark corner. Liz says her milk has dried up and she doesn't know if she should be giving their baby the powdered stuff yet, but the baby is still hungry. She feels sick and exhausted, so Michael tries to comfort her, which has a good effect on her, and she starts feeling better instantly. She says her baby's name is Winter. It just popped into her head out of nowhere. The two strangers come to Dr. McCarthy's office and claim their names are Mr. and Mrs. Smith, saying they need to speak to her. Instead of calling her Dr. McCarthy, they call her Dr. Lear, which is one of the names Dr. Gargunza mentioned, hinting that she's possibly another one of his experiments. Upon hearing the name Lear, Dr. McCarthy flies through the side of the building, destroying her office and escaping into the city. While her nurse thinks there was some kind of explosion, maybe a bomb, Winter stopped crying. She's not hungry anymore. That's because her mother fed her tinned food, but how is that possible? She's just a few days old, and babies don't eat solid food until much later. Michael visits her crib and thinks she is the most wonderful being in the whole world. She's perfect, though her bite is quite strong. Mr. and Mrs. Smith travel to Paraguay and find the dog's body. It was completely destroyed and is already rotting on the ground. They finally decide to confront Michael Moran, but if they go back to Great Britain, they need to change shape and dress themselves in something else. It's the year 1987 and Miracleman lives inside his Utopia fortress that he built for himself, looking down on what he calls Toy City, where humanity seems small and distant from his godlike vantage point. In the past, Johnny Bates is feeling a lot better and was sent to spend time with the other kids, but they bully him, and he cries to the head nurse while she consoles him. Winter is 1 month old now, but she already has teeth, which shouldn't be possible so soon. Liz feels confused all the time, as if her feelings aren't her own anymore, as if they get switched on and off, but she thinks it's probably postnatal depression. Michael goes outside to take a walk, but the two strangers from before approach him, saying they want to talk with his other self. He instantly changes into Miracleman, but the two people transform into aliens, revealing their true form, similar to the alien which crash-landed on Earth over 30 years ago. They begin fighting, but they are much stronger than him, and there are two of them at the same time. They change form, transforming into something else, revealing that they don't just have two bodies like him, but multiple, each suited for a different task. He is being beaten to a pulp, and all he can think about is his beautiful daughter, how much he wants to hold her in his arms again. But these aliens can read minds. They had no clue that he's a father, so the male rushes to his house to see for himself. She breaks inside the home and attacks Liz, who is scared to death for herself and her daughter. Suddenly, someone attacks the alien from behind and crushes its larynx, injuring it and rendering it unable to change form again. This person is Dr. McCarthy, or known by her real name Avril Lear, aka Miracle Woman, and she's here to save Liz. In 1987, Miracleman gives a tour of his Olympus Utopia fortress, reflecting on how humanity's concept of the world has outgrown politicians and celebrities, with society scaling up so dramatically that only gods remain, as he is now being openly worshipped by humans. He continues the tour of his fortress, heading towards a sperm bank facility, where his seed is being frozen and distributed to people across the planet as part of the effort to create the next generation of superhumans. He recalls the first time he met Miracle Woman and calls her his Madonna of the Quantum Age, his Muse, his Venus, while also kissing a giant screen with her face on it. In the present, the second alien knows that something is wrong and rushes to help him. He finds the other one laying on the ground, dying, and proposes a truce while she calls for help. She promises not to hurt them anymore. Everything is different now that they know Miracleman has a child. Miracle Woman convinces him to accept the truce and let her get help, while they go into the other room to talk. Her name is Avril Lear. She and Miracleman have met before in the 60s. Her story begins in 1955, when she was kidnapped as a teenage girl by Dr. Gargunza to turn her into a god, but he also abused her from the beginning. She was taken to a bunker, but not the same one where Miracleman was taken, an entirely separate, unofficial lab known only to Gargunza and his assistant, funded through diverted military money. The doctor cloned her and grew a perfect body, which he dressed exactly like a 50s comic heroine and then sent into infraspace. There was another orphan kidnapped, Terence Rebeck, who was implanted and dropped into infraspace to join the rest of Gargunza's clones. Gargunza sexually abused her while she was in her dormant state, infraspace body, undressing and assaulting her physical form while her consciousness was somewhere else, living out a vivid comic book reality as Miracle Woman. But he didn't just stop there. He eventually found a way to invade her dream reality itself, feeding her scenarios of bondage and torture even inside her dreams. His endgame was breeding. He wanted to pair her off with Rebeck, Dauntless, Bates, or even Miracleman himself, engineering a super-powered child he could then control. Gargunza exploited Rebek the most and turned him into a villain named Young Nasty Man. He treated him like an experiment, constantly pushing him to act out his own fantasies, which gradually escalated his depravity even beyond what Gargunza did alone. Rebek was driven insane by the constant illogical humiliation Gargunza fed him in the shared dream reality until he finally broke free. He woke up mid-episode and went on a rampage, screaming and bursting out of the lab, escaping into the real world. Gargunza panicked, realizing his secret Superman experiment was about to be exposed if Rebek wasn't stopped quietly. To cover his tracks, he manipulated the other Miracleman family members into hunting him down, under the guise of chasing an imaginary foe. At the same time, he accelerated his breeding program, waking Avril up specifically to be paired with the others during the hunt. She finds the other Miraclemen asleep on a mountainside where Gargunza dumped them, and they were surprised to see her, but welcoming. But young Miracleman wasn't so welcoming. He was rather jealous of her, mostly because he had a crush on Miracleman and didn't want her on their team. He suggested they should separate and she took the hint, choosing to go after Rebek all by herself. She eventually finds him in an Icelandic brothel, where she also finds one of his victims dead, proving that his violence spiraled out of control unchecked. Their fight ends catastrophically above an active volcano, when Rebek's powers give out from the heat. He was burned and killed, and in his final moment, he seemed to flicker and vanish into a strange dimension. Later, when his remains were discovered, the Spook Show team mistakenly identified the body as young Miracleman. Sir Dennis Archer was closing in on discovering how Gargunza had been diverting funds, which forced the doctor to kill his assistant and escape to Paraguay with his notes and dog. But the government now viewed the Miraclemen themselves as dangerous liabilities needing to be eliminated, so they built the Dragon Slayer. This was basically an atomic bomb cloaked by holograms. This was the ship they found in space, intended to destroy the Miracle family. The aliens from the other room are most likely connected to the alien who crash-landed on Earth 30 years ago. Liz is panicking and wants her husband to tell everyone to leave their home and leave them alone. The alien reveals its true form. They belong to a race called the Keys, and she has arranged to transport her fallen brother, who will be taken to Medikratz, and states that this matter will properly go before a tribunal. However, she also clarifies that before leaving, enemies must also be consulted. When out of nowhere, two aliens appear. These aliens are called warpsmiths, and one of them is grey, while the other is Chinese white. They talk in private and reach an agreement, saying that Miracleman and Miraclewoman will accompany the warpsmiths and kisses back to their home planet, but the baby will stay behind with her mother. Liz doesn't want her husband to go and abandon her, but he needs to go and find out more about his true origin. Meanwhile, Johnny is getting beaten up by the bullies again, and Kid Miracleman wants him to say the magic word and let him out, but Johnny refuses and prefers to take the beating. In the future, Miracleman claims that hell was abolished 2 years ago, talking about himself while flying through a futuristic Valhalla. Below him, he describes London as transformed into something soft and romanticized, with couples of all kinds openly affectionate in public, interracial couples specifically. He was able to create an artificial android society, a kind of God experiment with creation itself. One android is standing on the balcony experiencing an evening breeze that doesn't actually exist, since concepts like weather are unknown in its digital world, understood only through their absence. The narration shifts from Earth's transformed utopia, where instant global communication is replacing borders and cities, with information flowing at thought speed. The garden is described as full of exotic imported alien flora and patrolled by spectral projections, ghostly figures who repeat gestures across light years regardless of distance, implying some kind of grief memorial ritual tied to interstellar friendship. In the past, the crew arrives on the Keys' home planet, but Miracleman is stunned, assuming they've been transported to another galaxy in an instant. They pass through a giant chamber and finally see underspace itself, which Dr. Gargunza called infraspace, and which Miracleman describes as an infinite meat locker of stored alien bodies hanging in rows. Apparently there's a special summit happening in the ballroom, and their escort urges them to hurry. They come face to face with the King-Queen, who is an enormous coral-like creature floating on a pool of water. The escort says that her body is the most perfectly evolved and beautiful in all creation, but Miracle Woman doubts that claim. Apparently the Keys and the Warpsmiths are sworn enemies, but they've been at peace for the past 11,000 years. Even though the Keys are able to create superhuman bodies, the Warpsmiths are extremely fast. They literally traveled to another galaxy in an instant. The escort tells the Queen what happened on Earth, how one of their people crash-landed and the humans used their technology to create what they call cuckoos. There were 6 created in total. 3 of them are already dead, 2 of them are here, and 1 remains on Earth, but that one is brain dead and poses no danger. The queen explains that normally the Quees would have destroyed the cuckoos outright, but since one of them fathered a child with an Earth woman, the resulting baby, aka Winter, is undeniably native intelligent life, legally making Earth an intelligent class world under their law. The White Warrior class Warpsmith raises the obvious tension point, because Earth now becomes contested territory, and there's real potential for conflict between the two empires, which puts the 11,000-year deadlock in danger. Miraclewoman interrupts with a weird but simple suggestion. Instead of fighting, couldn't they just have sex instead? The Warpsmiths misinterpret her suggestion because their translator devices initially render it as an insult, which nearly provokes a diplomatic incident until it is clarified and the Qs begin to genuinely consider the idea. In the end, it works, the tone shifts, and Miraclewoman explains her reasoning. When two cultures are forced into contact, the relationship tends to go one of two ways, either thanatic and destructive or erotic and creative. She's proposing the latter as a literal structural solution to a Cold War. The summons conference ends and the verdict is delivered. Earth will remain uninterfered with by either empires, but will be observed by both sides as a test of whether further cooperation between the two aliens races is viable. A hidden observation post will be built behind Earth's moon, staffed by Warpsmiths who will periodically report back to the Keys. Two specific Warpsmith agents are assigned, including the White Warrior class they've already met, and a white-skinned one named Fawn Muda. Everyone parts ways and is transported back to their respective homes. Liz is in the apartment waiting for him, but she's mad at him for abandoning her and doesn't want to hear about his story. She thinks that her baby is controlling her feelings, making her feel bad, so she wants to spend a few days at her sister's place because she wants to be alone. After leaving the apartment, Winter starts talking and tells her father it's time to discuss Mother. Miracleman is amazed that his daughter can speak, even though she claims she could do it from day one. She can speak many more languages, but she chose to hide her powers because she didn't want to upset her mother. She's the one who's been controlling her emotions lately, but it has not been working great and her mother felt bad. She says she's already more advanced than her father, which might cause problems later on. Behind the moon, the Warpsmiths have brought a ship where they monitor Earth's activity from the shadows. They've created a hologram projected base that shows terrestrial events as they occur. He, Miraclewoman, and the two Warpsmiths, Fawn Muda and Aza Chorn, go on a tour. They scan Earth trying to find other extraordinary beings and they find Fire Drake, a homeless man who can control fire. They invite him to their group, saying they want to change the world and he can be a part of the future, so the guy accepts. Liz comes back after a few days, but says she can't continue living like this. Even sleeping with her baby feels wrong, as she feels like an animal compared to her. She decides to leave and abandon both of them. Winter says it's better this way because she also plans to leave and go to the Quee's homeworld, where she plans to study and learn everything she can. Her father can't teach her what she needs to know. Someday she promises to return and teach him all the things she's learned, and then flies away into space, hoping to arrive there in less than a year. Miracleman is now all alone, so he goes on a trip to the mountains. He decides to get undressed and bury his clothes in the ground. From this day forward, Michael Joseph Moran is dead, and he will continue living as Miracleman forever. He goes into the Mariana Trench, the deepest place on Earth, nearly 7 miles underwater, where he builds a secret base for himself called Silence. Meanwhile, Johnny Bates continues getting bullied at school by the boys, who want to hit him from behind. He finally has enough and can't take it anymore, so he says the magic word, transforming into Kid Miracleman. He viciously kills the boys who were bullying him and then leaves their bodies in the bathroom, but he runs into the nurse who's been taking care of him. At first he says he's going to let her live because she was nice to him, but he quickly changes his mind and runs his fist through her head. Miracleman spends more time with Miraclewoman aboard the Warpsmith spaceship, exploring the Earth-like holograms. While back in London, Kid Miracleman goes on a rampage, unleashing years of built-up rage while stuck inside Johnny's mind. He kills indiscriminately women, children, babies, and destroys a big chunk of London. Monuments that survived 2 world wars now lay in ruins. The Miracle family reunites and decides to confront him together. He was doing all this to gain their attention. He and Miracleman fight at the speed of thought, and the initial skirmish took only a few seconds, but entire landmarks were destroyed. Kid Miracleman was slammed into the Bank of England, surrounded by money and wealth, but it's all worthless now. Miraclewoman attacks him next, but he easily deals with her without breaking a sweat. Next he attacks Aza Chorn, but Warpsmiths are fast, and he teleports him into a building. Though that doesn't hold him for long. Aza Chorn wants to let Fire Drake deal with him, while they go on a mission to gather the extra power needed to defeat him. Aza Chorn travels back to his homeworld in an instant, and brings back a time machine, which he takes to the Mariana Trench to the secret base. Miracleman's mission is to encounter himself in the past and battle with himself, while Azachorn will contain the energies released from the skirmish, which should be enough to destroy a monster. The two guys go back in time, first to 1963 above the Arctic Circle, when the British government tried to kill the Miracle family by detonating the atomic bomb. Azachorn collects the discharge of energy, but they need more, so they travel to 1982, the first day that Miracleman remembered the magic word and transformed into a god again. Miracleman fights himself again, and they both discharge a lot of energy, which Azachorn collects, and they now have enough to defeat their enemy. But Kid Miracleman was waiting for them to come back and instantly attacks them. Azachorn hits him with the collected energy and the base is completely destroyed. At the ocean's deepest point, the pressure was immeasurable, but they survive by teleporting back to London. Kid Miracleman is injured and lays on the ground trying to recover, but that's when Miracleman attacks him. They fight underground, in the metro, destroying a train and killing everyone inside. Next, they go topside and start throwing cars at each other, while Miracleman hopes there was no one inside those cars. But Kid Miracleman is still too powerful. He's had his powers his entire life and was able to master his abilities. Azachorn teleports a piece of rock and metal straight into his brain, but even that doesn't kill him. The maniac retaliates by ripping out his right arm and destroying part of his body, but even injured, Azachorn takes a metal piece and impales him through the chest. This finally injures him greatly, and Kid Miracleman transforms back into his human form. Johnny is scared and says he can't keep him in, he's not strong enough and he'll just keep getting out. Miracleman reassures him and says that it's okay, he'll never have to suffer again because Kid Miracleman is never coming back. He's found a way to stop him, or at least that's what Johnny thinks. He then snaps the boy's neck, spilling blood all over himself, but there was no other way. Kid Miracleman is much too strong and he can never be allowed to come back. Half of London lays in ruins now and thousands of people were viciously killed, while the others cry in agony. Miracleman sits on top of his fortress called Olympus, reflecting on how it's been 5 years since his rebirth, and he's worried that people might mark the anniversary with something grim. A telex arrives from Tokyo, reporting geneticists have created a levitating mouse and a glowing rabbit that can talk, proof of how far science has advanced under his rule. He describes the top of Olympus as a hollow crystal room where the anniversary will be observed. Until then, he spends the afternoon watching Gargunza's old video dreams of his fabricated memories from the 50s, which are now commercially available and very popular. After Azachorn was killed by Kid Miracleman, the Miracle family was invited to their homeworld to attend the ceremony, which was basically an orgy between members of his family. They were politely invited to watch, and he remarks that he'd never witnessed anything so sensual or so sad. During the act, Miracle Woman had glanced at him and their eyes met, as if she wanted them to do the same thing. Next came the meeting with the government, and Miracleman suggested that the world economy must be restructured, broken down into manageable units, but the Prime Minister was against it. He casually suggested that he's not asking for permission, which scared the shit out of her, and she left shaken, not stirred. 2 days later, him and Fawn Muda, the other shapesmith, addressed the United Nations, saying they've teleported all the nuclear arsenal of every country into the sun, but the politicians attending can't believe it and think it's some kind of joke. They quickly realize this is no joke and they leave the room, abandoning their stations. Next, they did the same thing to the nuclear plants all over the world, and also the contaminated ground which was polluting the planet. But not everyone agreed with their actions and there were many protests. They even transported ozone from a lifeless gas giant and renewed the stratosphere and thinned the smog that trapped Earth's heat, endangering the ice caps. While this was going on, they also started working on a special fortress dedicated to Miracleman called Olympus, but they were just getting started. They announced that they don't need money anymore. From now on, everyone is free, and national surplus will be teleported to those nations who need it most until they master self-sufficiency. Each person will have free clothing, food, shelter, entertainment, and education. Basically all requirements for a worthwhile life, with greater luxuries for those who wish to work providing the above. Starting this summer, money won't exist anymore, but then, it never did. Once things were free, the crime rate plummeted. Encouraging this trend, they legalized all drugs, while saturating Earth with honest information on their toxic or benign effects. Drug smuggling perished almost overnight, and the crime cartels waged a war against the new regime, but they were easily dealt with. Criminals still existed, but the warpsmiths had identified a large portion of compulsive criminal activity as based on physical addiction to the body's own adrenaline, so they provided an organic substitute, a leaf, whose juices were a natural adrenochrome which basically decreased crime. By 1986, they had demolished Earth's last penitentiary, and they used the stones to build their Utopia fortress in the middle of London. Olympus was slowly being built in the ruins of London's devastation. giving them an area of 250 square kilometers. The Miracle family were deities, although they didn't know it then, and deities must have their habitat, their pearl-encrusted gates, and bridges made of rainbow. Miracleman and Miraclewoman finally became a couple, two gods flying above the city, making love and discharging energies powerful enough to light the entire night sky. Avril was the first to recognize their godhood possibilities and dangers, so she suggested the eugenics program, shipping frozen sperm to women who desired to rear a deity. Soon, gods shall be no more, for all are gods through her, the first god ever to love mankind so much that she'd decree them equally divine. Surrendering her own unique divinity, Firedrake became the fire god, and he took charge of meeting Earth's demands for energy, creating windmill forests, coastal water wheels, converting obsolete space weaponry into reflector satellites, and tapping the geothermal pulse warming from within Earth. A Kuzalian named Morse was sent to Earth, an expert in creating artificial bodies, but he had other skills. For instance, people who are recently deceased leave faint vibrations, echoes of their personality which could be captured and embodied in an android that enjoyed full life within the limited sustaining field that Morse erected in the basement of Olympus. This place literally became their underworld, and they started bringing back the dead. Even though they couldn't leave this place yet, it's still better than being dead. They've even found a way to fix Big Ben, and he became the British Bulldog, who now has acquired a reputation truly Herculean. They learned from the keys that it's possible to bring a body out of underspace by using drones, so Miracleman asked if they could bring back Gargunza's monstrous dog, but implant him with a new personality of a more friendly dog. It worked, and Miracle Dog was brought back to life and given the name Fenris, while the world calls him Overdog. Winter finally returned home, and she's amazed at how much things have changed on Earth, but the sky is still blue, and she wonders why her father didn't change it. She quickly took on a useful role within their new society. She helped supervise the birth of the first new super babies by increasing the mother's comfort. Soon, they started commercializing superhuman bodies, and everyone could be a god. But first, they started with volunteers. Miracleman visited Liz and offered to make her a god as well, to put her at the top of the list, but she declined and asked him to leave and never come back. Of course, their program of turning people into gods did not lack volunteers, but their selection process was severe, accepting only those they thought could use their power responsibly. But not everyone agreed with how the world was changing. All across the West, there are still clusters of survivalists, refusing to believe that Judgment Day did not arrive in 1985. Then there are the pan-fundamentalists, the zealots of both Christianity and the Islamic faith, who came to realize that they had much in common with each other, both endangered by the fact of gods on Earth who did not side with either creed. It's been 5 years since Michael Moran transformed into Miracleman, and they hold a big ceremony at the top of Olympus. This place was built in the middle of London, and it's amazing, a sprawling inner city made for gods, to be worshipped by everyone else around them. The ceremony ends, and Miracleman goes for a walk. He comes here quite a lot these days. Sometimes he thinks of Liz, sometimes he wonders why she turned down his offer, wondering why anyone should not wish to be perfect in a perfect world. Sometimes he wonders why that bothers him, and sometimes he just wonders.